you enjoyed a brief look at Big Bend National Park. This has definitely been one of my favorite parks to visit. Every turn and section was just a huge surprise for me, and I just absolutely loved it. I really knew nothing of Big Bend before venturing here, and fortunately I got online just a few days before arriving to see where to camp, and quickly noticed that you have to have reservations, that there are no free campsites in Big Bend National Park. So even if you're going to stay in the backcountry, which they do have 3 established campgrounds, and then you can stay in the backcountry, you have to have a permit for everything. So before going to Big Bend, make sure you do go online to recreation.gov and reserve your sites. If you do have an America the Beautiful pass, remember that you can get 50% off when you book, so look for that at the end. Campsites are $16 a night, if I was not mistaken, and so I got it for $8 a night at each of the established campgrounds, and then I think it's $10 a night if you want to stay in the backcountry, so I got it for $5 for the night that I stayed in the backcountry. Remember that will need either the America the Beautiful pass to enter Big Bend, or you have to pay a fee, and I believe that fee is $30, although I'm pretty sure that's good for 7 days. I stayed at all 3 campsites that Big Bend has to offer. I stayed at the Rio Grande Village, I stayed at Chiso Basin, and I stayed at Cottonwood. And those are the 3 established campgrounds in Big Bend National Park. Each one is in different sections of the park, which was very cool. I got to see different sections every single day. Rio Grande is the only one that is set up for big rig RVs. So if you're pulling anything larger than the teardrop, you may want to consider you may want to consider Rio Grande Village. Chiso Basin had a lot of signs posting about the winding roads going into it, and they do warn that anything larger than I think 20 feet of trailer, you don't want to take it on those roads, and they are kind of winding. Chiso Basin will arguably have some of the best views of the park, especially since you are staying right there in the Chiso's mountains. So you get to wake up and just see mountains all around you, and that was very amazing. I definitely enjoyed that campsite a lot. Campsites are very close together, so you will be kind of chummy with your neighbors though, which is never a bad thing. I met some very cool people. Cottonwood was the smallest of all the campgrounds. I think it only offered about 30 sites or so. The other sites had considerably more than that. Cottonwood is located in the Castellone section, I believe that's how you pronounce it. None of the campgrounds offered electricity, but 2 of them did have full restrooms. And by that I mean they actually had lights in there, they had sinks, they had separate ladies' room and men's room, while Cottonwood campgrounds only had pit toilets to offer. The Rio Grande Village was the only one that had showers, and they were $2 for 5 minutes. They're actually located in the camp store, which is directly outside of the campgrounds. Chiso Basin and Rio Grande Village are the only ones that had little camp stores at them. Chiso Basin had a visitor center as well as a camp store, and Rio Grande Village just had a camp store. And both of them offered kind of the same things. They both offered some supplies, ice, small meals, snacks. There was a gas station at Rio Grande Village, and there was a gas station at a place called Panther Junction, and those are the only 2 gas stations inside of Big Bend. And it is a very large park. You will do quite a bit of driving probably, so you'll want to probably fill up once, maybe twice while you're there, depending on how long you are there. Each of the camp stores, the one at Chiso Basin and the one at Rio Grande, did have Wi-Fi, which was pretty nice. And the Wi-Fi at the Chiso Basin was very fast. It was actually pretty surprising. Cottonwood did not have a camp store, Wi-Fi, and no cell phone reception. And cell phone reception was definitely something that was kind of hit and miss inside of Big Bend. I sometimes had enough for basic browsing, usually just on 3G, while other times I had absolutely nothing. I had no service whatsoever. The night I stayed in the backcountry was down a road called Grapevine Hills, and I stayed at campsite 2. And campsite 2 actually shares the same location with campsite 3. So if you have someone else camping with you, you guys will be right next to each other. But it's a very big spot, so you can definitely spread out a little bit. I lucked out, and the day that I arrived at my campsite at Grapevine Hills, the other group at campsite 3 were leaving. So I actually had the entire place to myself. So that was pretty nice. A lot of the gravel roads that you'll find in Big Bend are pretty rough at times, and that one on Grapevine Hills was considerably rough at certain times and pretty bumpy. I had to take it pretty slow, only about 5 to 10 miles per hour while pulling the trailer. I did see a few cars pulling it, but not many. I would recommend, excuse me, something with higher ground clearance if you're going to go down some of those great back roads. Unfortunately, Grapevine Hills does have one of the more popular trails on it. It has what's called the Balanced Rock Trail, and it's called Balanced Rock because there's actually a balanced rock over 2 other rocks. And I'll be really honest, that was not personally my favorite trail to take the whole time, but it was a nice little view when you got out there, so it was kind of cool. But I don't think I'd recommend going down that road, Grapevine Hills Road, in a car, and especially for that particular trail. It took kind of a long ways to get out there, and I just wouldn't recommend it. Speaking of other trails though, there are just some really great, fantastic hikes to take in Big Bend National Park. Lost Mine Trail was a very popular trail, and for good reason. It is a 5-mile round trip, and you'll go up about 1,100 feet, and you'll get very stunning views of the valley. I stayed up there for a good half hour or so, just sitting there kind of by myself actually, which is nice. Definitely worth the trip up there, but probably best to go early. Parking is very tough, and the heat can take a lot on you in the middle of the day, especially as you're just climbing up elevation the entire time. My favorite hike, however, was probably the Window Trail. Gorgeous views the entire way, and a very nice little scramble over some rocks at the very end to get to a very spectacular view of the window, which unfortunately I didn't capture on film very well, but trust me, the trip is very much worth it. If you do go to the Rio Grande Village side of the park, there is a natural hot spring that is literally sitting right on the Rio Grande Village, with Mexico just 50 feet away, just on the other side of the village, just on the other side of the river, which was very cool. It was actually kind of a surreal moment for me. I went to the hot spring at nighttime, and I went on Christmas Eve, and I'm sitting in this natural hot spring, 105 degree weather, or 105 degree water, with the Rio Grande River right there. I put my hand in the river, and Mexico is literally just 50 feet away, with a couple of Mexicans on the other side just camping out, doing their thing. And I was in there in the hot springs talking to people from all over the country and looking up at the Milky Way. And there was even a couple in the hot tub there, in the hot spring there, that actually had a pet monkey with them. So a very interesting night indeed. The Santa Elena Trail is another very popular hike. It's on the Cottonwood side, or the Castellone side of the park. Do be prepared to get your shoes wet, however, if you do that hike. There is a small stream you'll have to cross. Maybe bring some sandals or something like that to slip into when you do that part of it, and then that way your feet are not completely wet the entire time. As you can see in my video, I did cross into Boquillas, Mexico. The border crossing is also on the Rio Grande Village side of the park. Make sure that you do have your passport with you, and if you want to go, bring $5. And that's because as soon as you get through port of entry and you get to the Rio Grande River, there'll be a guy with a boat who will be waiting to take you across the river to Mexico. And as soon as you climb in and he rows the 20 feet or so it takes you to get to the other side of the river, it's not very wide, he looks at you and says, "Welcome to Mexico. That'll be $5 for the boat ride." So it is whatever. That's how they make their money, so I was okay to pay it. From there, as soon as you get into Mexico, they will offer you a donkey ride if you want to take that into town, or you can even pick up like a local guide. But I opted to just walk the half mile or so it was to Boquillas and walked around the town. There's not much to see or do in Boquillas. It's mostly the same thing. Couple people trying to sell you things that they're making, and a couple of restaurants there. Everyone said that the 2 restaurants in town were quite good, but I wasn't hungry, so I did not check them out. One thing that is kind of funny, as you do a lot of the hikes and trails around the Rio Grande Village side of the park where you'll find Boquillas Crossing, you might be walking down some of these trails and find someone selling something, which is things from Mexico that they're making. So they may be trying to sell you the same things that you could find at Boquillas, and they're usually mugs, walking sticks, and little trinkets and things that they make, little figurines and things that they make. Basically what they're doing is they'll cross the border early in the morning from Mexico, drop off all these things that you can buy with a tip jar and a sign that says, if you want any of these items, put your money in the jar and take what you like. And then they go back to Mexico and they stay there all day so they don't get caught by Border Patrol. And then they come back at sunset and they pick up their money. It was kind of funny. It's literally everywhere. When you're walking, you'll just be coming down a trail and there's a small patch of things being sold by somebody, but there's no one there to man it. There's no one there to sell it to you. It's just the honor system. You just put your money in the jar and you take what you want if you really want to buy something. It was kind of funny to see it everywhere. And of course, all of these items say Boquillas on it. So if for whatever reason you don't have your passport with you, or you don't feel like crossing the border to go to Mexico itself, but you're wanting a souvenir to say Boquillas on it, you can absolutely pick up any of these items, and they're pretty much all the same. I think they're about $10, which is the normal for any of those. Outside of Big Bend is a little town called Terra Lingua. It's an actual ghost town. It's literally maybe 1 block of dirt road with an art gallery, a gift shop, an extremely old cemetery, which was kind of neat to walk around, a small hotel, and the Starlight Lounge. This place was definitely a popular place to be. It didn't open until 5 o'clock, but there was a line forming at 4 o'clock just to get in for dinner. And when I left, I think they said there was a 2.5-hour wait. Food was very good, I will say. Very worth it, I guess, if you're going to be in that area and looking for a nice meal out. They did have live music. But I really want to give a big thanks to the Knapp family, who saw me sitting there by myself and invited me over to their table and to dine with them, and wanted to hear about my story. They said they saw the trailer in the park and they wanted to hear about where I had been so far and where I was kind of headed. So that was very cool. I was very appreciative of that. Thank you again, guys. Overall, I really recommend Big Bend National Park to anyone who's into parks and looking for some great scenery and some really fun hikes. Texas is an interesting place. You basically have Dallas, Austin, San Antonio, Houston, Corpus Christi, a couple other towns sprinkled in there. Those are kind of your big ones. But the rest of the state is all private land, and camping is very tough to do in Texas itself, especially dispersed camping, wild camping. I did find a couple nice places outside of Waco, but there's not really much else going on in the state, and so there's really not much of a reason to venture outside much of those other cities, except for Big Bend National Park itself. It's definitely worth the drive over if you're thinking about going. If you have any questions for me, or looking for any kind of advice maybe on, say, maybe the campsites or anything I stayed at, let me know in the comments below. I'd be more than happy to answer any questions that anybody has, as well as I will put some links into my description of maybe some of the supplies I used, like my camp shower and things like that. Well, that's it, guys. Thank you so much for escaping normal life with me, and we'll see you on the next one.